Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And thank you for registering for today's webinar. It's entitled Beyond the Booking, the Power of Data to Personalise the Guest Journey. Thank you for joining. My name is Jane Pendlebury. I'm the CEO of HOSPA, the Hospitality Professionals Association. It's Thursday, the 18th of September. It's 10 a.m. And I'm very grateful to the team at Agilysys for helping us pull together this webinar today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Matthew Prosser. Matthew and I go back a long way, so it's good to have him here as a guest again today. The Agilysys office is actually in Windsor, and we've got the US President Donald Trump in the UK, and he is actually in Windsor at the moment. So if we get a glance out of Matthew's window, we may get a glimpse of some traditional pomp and circumstances, a helicopter, or maybe a policeman on a horse, who knows? But we're due to be chatting today for around 30 minutes with time for questions at the end. So we should be finished by 10:45 latest. Please do ask questions throughout using the Q&A option. If there's not enough time to answer all your queries, then we'll get back to you afterwards. The webinar is being recorded, and we're happy to share the link afterwards. And it will also be available on our website and YouTube channel as usual. So, Matthew, ready to get stuck in?
Absolutely, unless President Trump decides to disturb us, which hopefully for the next 45 minutes he won't. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Hopefully not too noisy if the helicopters and whatever they're doing, but let's see what happens. So I know we've spoken before about how things like Netflix and Amazon that we use, often daily, but regularly, and you've come to expect a high degree of personalization from things like that. But the hospitality industry, which is built on the concept of service, has found it challenging to deliver that same data-driven personal touch. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess it's probably worth doing some scene setting to begin with. I mean, you're right. Look, we do absolutely live in an era of hyper personalization. Consumers are no longer just buyers, right? They're users of sophisticated data-driven services. And I guess there's that benchmark, that big tech effect. We'll almost become an Uber generation. If we think of maybe three of the core fundamental platforms we use as consumers, one being Netflix. Netflix pretty much knows and curates what we want to watch before we know it. Amazon, well, Amazon have been doing a good job for many, many years and almost tell us what we need to buy before we need to know what we want to buy. And last but not least, Uber. I mean, Uber has now been around probably since 2011, 2012 from memory. And they, had this wonderful concept of really converting the mindset of the individual from the car that takes you from A to B to focusing on the passenger, obviously what we would call the guest. And, they've all had great success in doing that. The challenge and the hospitality disconnect that we live and breathe, and we're, as you said, both ex-hoteliers and have been in this industry a very long time, is, guests arrive at a hotel with I guess, those types of expectations baked into their daily lives. They expect to be known and understood. However, the hospitality industry has historically lagged behind, and it's lagged behind what we have become used to in our consumer lives. And I've always struggled to understand that as an ex-hotelier and as someone that loves technology, why that has always been the case. Why has there always been this excuse that's been put before us that we always have to lag behind other verticals? I mean, I've not even touched on the retail industry per se. But it's really important that we stop having that mindset and try and move forward. And I hope through this webinar, we have the opportunity of exploring those core challenges, preventing true personalization that those other organizations I mentioned have been able to achieve. And as we go through this webinar, hopefully we can explore some of those areas that now are available to the industry that they can embrace and take upon and use in their day-to-day lives and running their business.
Yeah, so I guess with technology marching on at the rate it does, could you perhaps elaborate on the practical challenges that hotels
Yeah.
face with their current systems and the fragmented data and the systems all in their separate silos? What the problem actually looks like for a hotel manager or front desk employee day to day?
Yeah, and I guess, look, there is that paradox, right? A typical hotel or resort is generally data rich today. I think everyone's tried to accomplish this need of gathering data. I'm definitely not here to talk about that matter specifically, but every interaction creates a touch point. And the problem is that the data is captured and stored in those disconnected silos, as you've just alluded to. If we take an example of a single guest, a guest may come in and have information in the property management system. They may have a dinner reservation, and therefore that information, along with dietary or allergen information, is contained within the dining reservation or the point of sale system. That individual may have a spa treatment if it's a resort or a 4 or 5-star boutique hotel. If it's a resort out in the country, they may indeed entertain a game of golf. And perhaps their initial inquiry, when they first explored where to stay, is captured in a CRM platform. And I guess the consequence ultimately is, for the hotels technology, that's 5 different areas where we've contained information on one particular guest profile. And therefore, there's no single source of the truth. All right, that doesn't exist. And again, that's why the hotel industry has embraced over the last decade CRM platform to try and bring this data together. So the hotel has the data to know that, this individual, likes spa treatment. She or he is gluten-free, and they like a round of golf, but it absolutely lacks the information to act on it proactively. All right, and we're going to come on to some of those issues if you don't act on data proactively. And therefore, this 100% leads to issues around missed opportunities for both service and how we can excel more in the service. And of course, fundamentally, revenue opportunities as well.
Yes, absolutely. Getting the most from those guests and making their stay better by giving them
Yeah.
sort of what they want. So this is sort of a single guest profile. I remember when I was working in hotels, we used to have little cards. We wrote it in. Gosh, that's aging me, isn't it? Our guest history. But the concept of a unified or intelligent guest profile sounds like a perfect solution. In practical terms, what does that technology do? What key pieces of guest information from across the property, as you were saying, all the different areas, need to be brought together to create this single view?
Yeah, and I think this industry has been crying out for this technology to really help in our endeavors to accelerate the way in which we look after our guests in this industry and propel us beyond the Amazons, the Ubers, the Netflix, and everything else. We want to lead and we want to innovate as ambassadors for our industry. And look, the goal is absolutely to create that single, persistent and dynamic, I guess, for want of a better word, a golden record, right? A golden record of that guest for every guest. And this has to be the foundation of the hospitality industry and the technology that is provided to that industry. Just as an example, here at Agilysys, we absolutely refer to that as the intelligent guest profile. So we've tried to go on beyond the guest profile per se, and what that is it's a single overlay. It's an aggregated 360-degree live view, and that's really key. And we'll probably talk about that in a bit more detail shortly. But it's a live view of the guest, all right, and it's created by combining data from all those touch points that we're familiar with in our properties across the entire property and resort, and within one platform. All right. And if you think about those external organizations like Uber and Amazon that I've again referred to, they thrive because they operate profiling capabilities within one platform. All right. And for 20, 30, 40 plus years, again, experiencing, being a hotelier at the coalface, we've never had that opportunity. All right. And I guess how we've approached it is really through 4 key areas. Obviously the transactional data, what the guest spends, where they spend it, when they spend it, are they always ordering a specific bottle of wine? The behavioral data, the booking windows, the channels used, the ancillary services that they purchase, preference data even, and again, some of this will be familiar with from the rooms perspective, but, room preferences, the high floor, the various attributes of the booking journey that we'll go on as a guest, but of course dietary needs that are so important in today's world, even down to the pillar type or just general interest such as spa, golf, or fine dining. And then engagement data. So actually, how do our guests want to be engaged with. Do they want to use the hotel app? Do they want to provide feedback? And I think aside from those four components, there's then one final piece, and we call that the power of the and. And this profile ultimately allows the hotel to understand the guest in totality. All right, it's not just that they like the spa, and not just that they like fine dining, but they are a guest who consistently books a spa package and a tasting menu experience together on the second night of their stay. And again, the analysis that's being done in a live environment will continually look at ways of how we can leverage the data that we as operators are exposed to, which gives amazing insights in the moment. So this is live data and it's in the moment. What we have to remember is that when that guest leaves and goes out the door, it's going to cost us more money to ensure that that guest comes back. And again, I'll touch on that in a minute. But fundamentally, that's the core principles of the intelligent guest profile, a profile that all of the hotel industry should now be leveraging to understand more and more about their guests. Right? What we don't want them to do is to come in from a perhaps what is a world they're conditioned to an environment that's lagging behind, as I've said. So we need to move forward.
Yes, and it's yes. There's along with retail, I think sometimes we get slammed for not keeping up with technology, don't we? Along with the banks, who always seem to be streets ahead. And having this rich profile is utterly brilliant. But activating it isn't always as easy as it might be. And certainly, if I go back to when I used to write it out on a card, that was only read once, probably before the guest arrived, and that was it. Can you walk us through a couple of examples of how a hotel can actually use this unified data to create a genuinely personalized experience for the guest? Going from perhaps even before they arrive to during their stay and potentially post stay as well.
Sure. And again, I think, all hotels out there have data. I think it's just about the way that you handle that data, analyze the data and use it to your benefit ultimately. So many times I'm with customers where they have these silos of data and all they're using on a daily basis is first name, last name, and email address. But they're not quite sure, even with a CRM platform, how they can bring all this information together. So look, absolutely, look, a unified profile is useless if it just sits in a database. Its power lies in its ability to inform actions across the entire guest journey. So yeah, let's look at some examples. So pre-stay, that anticipation period where guests are looking forward to visiting the property. At Agilysys, we focus heavily on the ability for the guests to book a seamless itinerary. All right, the customer doesn't have to go to the golf system, the dining reservation, the rooms element. Everything needs to be in one place, and we're constantly assessing that itinerary, by the way, for upsell opportunities at various stages prior to their arrival. And it's not just about analyzing what they've booked, but it's probably more important to think about what they have not booked. All right. And I guess two examples, the upgrade that we're all familiar with, again, as perhaps regular guests that stay in hotels will get the static message that will appear in the morning, the day before, and we'll be able to upgrade. But actually, it's more relevant if we can make it specific to the guest. All right. How many times have they stayed with you? How much have they paid for that upgrade? How many times have they accepted that upgrade? And really, what has that ultimate price point been? And if we can nail those three and triangulate that, then the likelihood of that guest accepting that upgrade is going to be pretty near 100%. All right. And again, that's the intelligence of the profile that's delivering that information to the guest, whether that be on their mobile device as they go to check in, or whether we're alerting them to a notification, perhaps via an app, that again, there's this offer there as well. Another one might be, again, if I take the example of a spa in a nice resort 5-star hotel, the missing spa treatment. We know from before that this guest may have enjoyed their stay. We know that they'd have enjoyed their spa in the last visit. And on this occasion, we've obviously noticed that they haven't booked a spa. So here we are now asking, would you like to pre-book a favorite massage that you've had before, and perhaps even receive a complimentary glass of champagne or Prosecco, perhaps as an added incentive to entice them in to something that they've spent money on before. But on this occasion, through their itinerary that they booked, they haven't taken us up on that offer. And actually, at that point, you could even go one better. All right. You could actually, you know, look at the menu that's available and if you offered the menu, the spa menu, for example, to this guest, you could begin to shrink that menu specifically for that guest. And what I mean by that is looking at the higher margin items that we believe that they'll be most interested in rather than the lower margin items. So not only now is that personalization becoming really key, but we're identifying perhaps a gap in their itinerary that they've used before. And now not only are we looking for that first initial level of secondary spend, but now we're pushing that even higher through channeling specific treatments only available to them. So again, you know, some nice examples there in terms of how, you know, both elevating the customer experience and increasing the revenue potential of that guest really pays dividends. On property, simple example, empowering the staff with the relevant information. You know, the front desk agent sees, you know, it's the guest anniversary, and we're probably used to that one. Yeah, you know, I stayed recently in a hotel with, you know, celebrating anniversary. But the difference with the intelligent guest profile is that this information is available everywhere. All right, everywhere that's you know, has that touch point, and every operator that has the, I guess, privilege perhaps is the right way of saying it, to access information. So no longer is this profile information contained to the front desk. All right, this is available everywhere in real time. And what that means is that there's no need for double entry, and it's a mindset change. It's a mindset change that this profile floats around the resort. Maybe that's probably not a bad way of putting it, but you know, on entering the restaurant, the you know, the host is immediately drawn to the fact that it's someone's anniversary and we can look after them in a particular way. But I haven't had to receive that information from a secondary source. I haven't had to receive a phone call. I haven't had to double up on an entry of a profile. You know, it's just present. It's just there. And I think for hoteliers, it is really about a mindset shift in thinking, I don't have to poll this information to different places. It just exists. Just like it does in our lives around Netflix, Amazon, it's just there. So again, I think that's really important, and I think the, you know, the point about, you know, intelligent guest profiles is that they're absolutely live. You know, they follow the guest around. They're able to act on information as well. So if we think about the point where that guest has left the property, I used to work in the stadium industry for many years, and the focus, I think every industry has this secondary spend issue. But a season ticket holder would just pay money for the season ticket and wouldn't spend any money on the day. They'd come and go, and that's it. And hotels perhaps have the same challenge in the sense that, you know, guests come and stay for the 24, 48 hours or longer, but actually what are we doing to enhance that secondary spend when we're there? And we need that information to empower the operators to make the decision, as well as the technology to suggest what we need to do to help them. And I think through that profiling, through that intelligent profiling, we absolutely have the capability to do that. And I think if we're not doing that as hoteliers, and we're letting people go out the door, and then we're crunching data through CRM, and our fantastic marketeers will do a great job, and in 2 weeks' time we'll promote a campaign that will get people back, we've left all that money on the table. All right. And actually a hotel compared to a venue, and perhaps there's people on this call that have a likeness for sport and will visit. You know, it's a really important thing to ensure that we generate that secondary spend. And for a hotel, they don't have an hour and a half to entice people to spend in a secondary way. We've got hours to ensure that we can look after the guests. But it might be we don't know where they are in the resort. We can't find them. So through the guest app, we look at the data, we put a notification through, and actually, guys, why don't you try and visit the spa or visit the bar or visit the restaurant, because we've identified, obviously operationally, that we could get some further spend from you if we just looked after you and targeted you in a particular way. So, you know, the great thing is that this now exists in our industry. It's been something that we've been waiting for a long time. It's almost the holy grail, but it's there, it exists, and it's live, and it's out there being used. So it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, no, and I've spoken to people that are using your system and know that that they're making the most of all of these things. I mean, some great examples there, Matthew, about promoting higher margin spa treatments, or upselling, getting them to visit the bar when they may not have done. Lots of, as you know, of our HOSPA members are focused on financial performance in various different ways, either sort of directly in finance or through revenue management, commercial directors, that sort of thing. Beyond creating the wow moment for the guest, the direct commercial impacts of this level of this level of personalisation must be really impactful. It must drive hotel revenue to that crucial secondary spend, as you were talking about. Have you got some live examples of that? I mean, I know for sure from talking to one of your clients, but I think everyone probably knows I'm talking about Watergate Bay and that group of hotels. They're great advocates and great users of your system.
Yeah. I mean, they speak, tremendously well on, something that they're extremely passionate about. And I think it's worth noting and sharing with the audience how, again, as an industry, from a metric perspective and analyzing the profitability of our organizations, we're tending still to lean towards the average daily rates, the RevPAR metrics that have been ever present for 20, 30 years. And they've been ever present for 20, 30 years because they're important to start with. But again, the systems and the technology platforms haven't been there to allow us to amalgamate data and provide us essentially with metric-driven data that focuses on the guest. All right. And now it does. And we, like Uber, like Amazon, like Netflix, must focus on the guest in totality. All right. I don't think we're going to see a time where we see those RevPAR metrics disappear, but we have to see the time where we bring in a true focus on a revenue per guest model. And we can only do that if we've got the data that's enabling us to drive that. And if we've got the data, we can use it intelligently to ensure that we maximize the secondary spends. And the guys at Watergate Bay and another place, both in the Lake District in Scotland, are really, really strong advocates of the most important factor of their business is the guest. And of course, we know that as hoteliers, we know that the guest is important, but to have the information and the data in front of us to be able to target and personalize that guest in the right way that ensures that they either have an elevated experience during their stay, the hoteliers profit from that enhanced experience, and we can ensure that they return with, I guess, less expenditure on the hotelier's part to entice them back, is all about the reasons why we have to focus on a revenue per guest model. And again, in a live environment, I have the ability, and so do the guys at Watergate Bay, to look immediately today, this morning, right now, at in-house guests and see their spending habits. And that's pretty unique, I think, still. And as hoteliers, if we're looking to protect ourselves for the next 10, 20, 30 years, should we be making the same procurement decisions for our guests and our generations of guests that we have done for the last 30 years? Or is it really time to change and move forward and really evaluate how we should be protecting our own businesses, our own investments with the technology that's necessary to appeal to the demographics that are going to be coming? And I think that they're really important messages that are there to be taken hold of and embraced and actioned.
Yes. And at the moment, I've been out and about a lot this week, and hotels, indeed all hospitality businesses, need all the help they can get, especially at the moment with rising costs, not just the recent
Yeah.
employee costs, but increasing food inflation. And if they can enhance the additional secondary spend, that's only got to be a good thing, because there's probably quite a good profit margin in that. So the investment in the technology up front should help them reap the rewards relatively quickly, I would imagine.
Yes.
Um, Matthew, looking to the future, you mentioned, the next 10, 15, 20 years. What do you think is next in this space? And for the hotel operators, which I know there's plenty listening today who want to move beyond the booking, it's quite overwhelming for them, isn't it, sometimes? But what would you recommend to them for important first steps that they should begin to take to get a truly guest-centric data strategy?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a good question, and immediately everyone thinks of AI, and I'll probably touch on AI right at the end. I'm not going to talk about it at length, but it is definitely an important factor. No, I can't talk for every hotelier. But it's definitely time that everyone should be evaluating their technology stack, and seeing how, as I said, we can protect and survive in this tough industry now, and seeing that through for the next year, 5 years, 10 years. We definitely can't stand still. Definitely don't stand still. If you're going to stand still, then I guarantee that others won't, and you'll be left behind. And we have to move from, I guess, being room centric, which I think is really still what the industry thinks about, to being guest centric. And again, they're clear takeaway messages that let's think about the guests more than we've ever done before, and let's of course still consider rooms, because we've lived and breathed rooms for many years, but we've got to embrace the guests more in our mindset and how we think. And if we use guest-led metrics in combination with RevPAR and ADR metrics, then I think we're going to probably see some successes. I guess don't let your guests feel like they're walking into a world that lags behind their regular lives. I feel that I've probably stayed away 70 to 80 nights this year, whether it be a mix of business and pleasure. And I've definitely walked into some hotels and thought I've walked back 5-10 years in the way that you're looked after. And actually, some of them are fantastic hotels, but I think it's just, again, the technology and enablement in terms of how they can leverage technology to look at you. And I also think, going back to that intelligent guest profile, it's also important to identify, a profile individual. Are they staying on business or are they staying on pleasure? The dynamics of that are going to be very different in terms of how we market to those individuals, pre-stay, in-stay, post-stay. And again, I've talked a lot about that in-stay capability to maximize secondary spend. So again, we're not always going to be promoting the same things if an individual's on their own for business versus with their families. Look, AI is here, right? Everyone talks about AI. Every event we go to talks about AI. 5 years ago, it was Wi-Fi. Before that, it was data. Now it's AI. And actually, just an example, we're heavily embracing AI. We have our own AI team here. We have a brand that we've labeled Guest Sense AI that really delivers lots of features and functionality. And through that AI innovation is really going to propel us forward at a pace I don't think anyone's ever seen before. But of course, with AI, you need data. Yeah, there's not much point in talking about AI if you've not got data in the first place. And if you've not got data in the right place and the right way in the first place, then let's just park AI and leave that for another 5 years. Of course, we can't do that. All right, we need to leverage AI in the right way. So really, the ability for these guests to begin planning, to begin implementing technologies that's either going to allow them in one foul swoop to have this information at their fingertips, or whether that's more of a stepping stone approach, where they're building towards utopia, are two absolutely acceptable ways of working towards a common goal, and a common goal that's really going to help hoteliers and hotels be the standout industry. All right, be the standout industry, not the one that lags behind.
Yeah.
And I think, as someone that's worked in the software industry for 25 years and in hotels for 5 to 7 years, it's easier than ever to change technologies. I think people sometimes, feel like they might have a heart condition if they think about replacing their PMS. But I can confidently say that the architecture and technologies of products that exist today really help, I guess, dismiss some of those myths that perhaps existed many years ago, and taking the heartbeat out of the operation and replacing it. Those are areas that can be done in a lot more fluid and I guess productive way that really limits the challenges that hotels would have faced in the past. So look, I think the message is, we have to embrace change. We should have always had the outlook of embracing change, and I think in our industry now it's really important to embrace how we can better look after the guests, better leverage the data that we have to look after the guests, and also in a live environment. Yeah, again, tradition has it that we'll always welcome the guests back at the front desk because we can see on the screen that they've stayed before. But not in my experience have I ever been in an environment until recently where I can go to the spa and have a treatment, walk to the restaurant, and the restaurant host say, "How was your spa treatment?" I mean, that's pretty cool. All right. Or conversely, I've gone the other way, and how was your steak, sir? Because it's appearing on a screen, or allergen information that's shared rather than always having to be asked all the time. They're cool features and functions that absolutely exist right now, today. And again, I think there are reasons why the likes of Watergate Bay and other resorts around the country are really embracing the technologies we have. But everyone needs to be embracing and thinking along those lines. So yeah, just some thought really in terms of what's next, and perhaps what hoteliers should be thinking of as they drive forward with their next area of technology spend.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. Actually, we've got our awards coming up, and the entries are coming in for the Technology Leader of the Year. And reading some of those, it's incredible how much more they can achieve now in a year. In years gone by, a PMS project would just dominate the year, and you wouldn't be able to do anything else. But people are replacing PMS along with lots of the other bits and pieces around
Yes.
it, and they're able to achieve it. So it's
Good.
great that it's not that enormous slog and mountain that it used to be. I'm not suggesting for a moment it's easy, but it's easier
Yeah.
than it was. Um, and when you were saying some bits there, it reminds me, I've been involved in a project recently about meetings and events, and just hotels and their owners and the asset managers are sort of waking up to other areas of business and
Mm.
revenue generating. And certainly there are meetings and events being the example that I've been involved in. A lot has been overlooked, and revenue management has been very focused around the bedrooms and the bedroom revenue. And despite what they said, a lot of the revenue management systems haven't been able to look at total revenue. And I think there is a new commercial
Yeah.
eye-opening to additional spend and getting the most out of what you've got already in there.
There is. We have to go beyond the room. We absolutely do. And I sit as a non-advisory board member for the UK Spa Association, and that is an amazing industry. It's worth billions to the UK market. As consumers, we're probably aware that it's growing, but I think for a good period of time, it was a bit of a silent partner in the hotel and resort over what was happening on the room side or the F&B side. But in some respects, it can generate more revenue than maybe what the dining restaurant can.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to look at all these areas, all these ancillary revenue opportunities: meetings, events, spa, golf, resorts, maybe general activities if you're a country retreat where you might have walks or other activities, other external activities that are necessary in terms of building up your itinerary. So yeah, every facet of revenue opportunity needs to be looked at and controlled through technology, and the data that comes with that as well is only going to help move us forward.
Absolutely. Right, we do have some questions here. So everybody listening, if you have any more questions, please do continue popping them in. One question was about, you said in the moment, real-time updates alert for staff. And I'm not sure where this one's going. So
Okay.
if you're somebody in a restaurant and you get the alert saying that this person has just had their spa treatment, is that really a real-time alert, or when they put that guest's name in, is that when it comes up and just gives you a little summary of what they've just done?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the examples is that we hold the transactional information. And again, this is, one of the benefits of having a platform. And again, for those that maybe are learning and are on this journey, that those external products that we talked about, like Uber and Amazon and Netflix, operate on a platform. If you operate on one system, then the data just exists. We're not sending it anywhere. And one of the benefits there is that, yeah, if we take the restaurant example, we're capturing the transactional information. All right. If I go to the spa, I'm not on a different system. All right. I'm not all of a sudden using a different system from a different company that maybe just has nothing more than just a general interface back to the front office, because that's what we've done for 30 years and we've charged the spa treatment back to the front office. Here we're coexisting on a platform that, as I said, I use that word floating really just to try and explain, but it's just the profile that exists. So I'm accessing the same information that the person at the restaurant is accessing. So if they're coming to the spa, and I want to say, it's probably not a good example really of coming to the spa and asking how was your bottle of wine, but that information is readily available. And I touched on allergens as well, and we've known for a long time now how important that is in terms of controlling allergens and making sure that we get everything right, and not forgiving any litigation that may come from making mistakes. So it's critical that we have allergen information in that point of booking, and that allergen information then transcends through across all areas. And of course, that's just as relevant in the restaurants. It might be in the spa, because maybe I'm going to have something to eat in the spa after my treatment. I don't want to keep asking, but I want that information in front of me. We're actually doing a project with a client at the minute that will absolutely bring up an alert on the point of sale screen if the profiling information linked to the menu information identifies an issue. All right, so that's technology that we're looking at and is coming, because now we're not just having an alert on a point of sale screen to say, oh, this is a nut allergy, but this is now personalized alerts. All right, so for all the, I guess, simplicity of a message that appears on a screen where the operator can accept it or action it, the magic that's happening behind the scenes is really driving towards something that's really, really important for our industry that we get right all the time. So yeah, probably a long-winded example, but yeah, live information, in the moment information, and information that I can act upon.
There was a point raised actually in the Q&A here about allergens, and saying it's important to reiterate back to your guest that, yes, we know you've got a nut allergy, rather than asking every time. I mean, it's great that we're asked every time, but I've been at a table in a restaurant. I think I've been asked 3 times by different members of staff, are there any allergies at the table? And after a while, you just think, we've already told you.
Yes.
But anyway, so that's
and we
great.
know why we have to do that, right? We know we have to
Yeah, of
do that
course.
for legal reasons.
Yeah.
Marine one just going past.
Oh, exciting.
But yeah, we've got to be so vigilant, and if we can allow technology to deliver that, then it's only going to help us.
Brilliant. I've got a question here about the same. You mentioned about a guest might be there on business and come back on leisure. And the question is, can the system differentiate between whether it's business Jane or holiday Jane? Because I might act very differently.
Yeah, it can, because it will also look at the guests that are attached to your profile. So it can even look at family members or associated profiles that are connected. And it can look at those attributes as well in terms of the spending behaviors of how they, I guess, will part with their money during their stay. So yes, we can do simple searches for individuals. It will prioritize who's in house, who's about to arrive, and who hasn't arrived, and then who's just sitting in the database as well. So I can have that information. So I can immediately see, if Mr. Smith is coming on his own, and I can immediately see if Mr. Smith is bringing his wife and his children with him as well for a much longer stay. And again, the dynamics then of the system is going to work out the I guess the ways in which we will approach them. Maybe some of the kids might want to use the app. Maybe the adults maybe haven't embraced the app for the resort and wish to be communicated through another means. And all of those options are open to us in the way in which we would look after the dynamics of that group or that individual.
Okay,
It's pretty
brilliant.
cool as well.
Got a question about AI.
Oh.
Could you please elaborate further on the use of AI in hotels? You mentioned the importance of using data effectively and integrating it with the right technology.
Sure.
Are there any additional examples of how AI can be applied to support guest booking decisions?
Sure. Okay, well, I've mentioned the upgrade one already, which again, we take from that static messaging through to something that's very personalized for that guest, which ensures that the win rate, I guess, of those upgrades for the hotel are going to increase. It's probably worth mentioning about, again, through that consistent booking journey that we take our guests on, is probably worth mentioning spa. So I've talked about the way in which, through the attributes of that profile, we can certainly have opportunities where we remove items from a spa menu to ensure that we home in on high margin items, and high margin items maybe at peak times during the day as well. If I stay on the spa thread as well, we can also ensure that the technologies enable the spa operators to reduce what we call white space or noise. And what I mean by that is the gaps that are left between treatments that ultimately, over the course of the week, the month, the year, could add up to 6 figures in lost revenue because we haven't managed the schedule correctly. And a lot of spas will look at that on a daily basis and try and work out and shift treatments around. And if if you've ever had spa treatments where you may have been notified a couple of days before that your spa treatment's been moved by an hour, that's probably because they're dealing with the white space issue and need to fit something else in for half an hour so they maximize the day. That's of course disappointing for the experience because I've now just maybe had to move my lunch, or I've just had to, have a half an hour doing something else. But actually, if we let the technology take the strain, and not only dealing with the high margin items based on profile information, but also now from an operational perspective, ensuring that we're every day filling up the right spaces where we've got half-hour treatments, 1.5-hour treatments. The system will just ensure that, every time slot is booked, every day of the week. So if we even coupled that with more traditional yield management as well that exists, and again, we'll be familiar with, not only have we got the ability for yield management, we've also got the ability for being selective in terms of what appears on the menu, but now we've also got the ability to manage white space, all three in unison. And again, that's very, very innovative in terms of how we can maximize spend in that one department. So yeah, just some examples. I mean, there are many others, and there'll be many more. But again, remembering, so long as we've got that data in one place, then we can overlay the AI opportunities more and more as we progress.
Yeah, it'll be really that's the interesting space to watch, isn't it? And how it's developing. Just one quick question left. If anyone's got any more, you have to be quick. I've got one left. And it's a very simple one, Matthew. Can you print the itinerary for the guests? So if someone's arriving and they're playing golf, they're going to the bar, they've got a restaurant, they've got a spa, whatever, can you print that itinerary, or does it go onto an app? How does that actually
Yeah, no,
transfer?
absolutely. Of course you can print it. We take the guest on a journey that allows them at the outset of that booking to do one of two things really. One is book an experience in the way that they want to. And secondly, and something that's been really, really important for this industry, is the way that packages are designed. So not only can we have what we call that a la carte way of selecting what we want, but we can also take our guests on a journey through a predefined package that allows that workflow, that journey. And of course, throughout that journey, you're having the upsell capabilities in that as well. And of course, at the end, whether they want to view it online or print the itinerary, they can do that. They will, of course, have that emailed to them as well. Again, in the industry, we're used to all this information coming back to a central reservations office, and people then putting all this information in different systems. The beauty here is that, I've got my itinerary, I've booked my experiences, and it's just in the system. That's it. So if you think about the cost saving from that side, also the operators, the people in those reservations office have, through one screen, through one page, the ability to edit and view the itineraries as well across the entire resort. So it's really not just thinking about the experience that the guest has, but also think about the experience that the operational staff in the hotel will have in how they deal with, I guess, what's going to be coming, where people need to edit their itineraries, change their itineraries, some circumstances change that needs to have something altered, and either the guest can do that through their own means, or the operator in the hotel can do that without having to spend an hour going into different systems and making sure everything balances. The technology and intelligence within the system will do that for you.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're pretty much out of time, but thank you so much, Matthew. That was super interesting. But thank you all for listening as well, and for your questions. They was good. It's always good when they come flooding in. But as always, as I always say at the end of the webinars, if you need any formal advice, then please approach your professional advisors or come directly to me at HOSPA for a referral. And please let me know if you would like to be directly introduced to Matthew or the team at Agilysys. I'd be very happy to do that. Please do also take a look at hospa.org for other upcoming events. We have a number of webinars this month and a few in-person events coming up too. Our now annual Great Green Balloon Debate is going to take place on the 16th of October at the Melia White House in London. Really looking forward to that. Last year's was full of valuable insights into how to save the planet. So I think wherever you are on your sustainability journey, this is one not to miss. We've also got a golf day at the Belfry. It's on the 23rd of October. So if you like golf, or even if you don't, please sign up for that. That's in conjunction with Centelli. And we're also raising funds for Hospitality Action on that one, and some other charities too. And then, of course, Hospice, our annual conference. Please secure tickets as soon as you can so that you can join us on the 13th of November at the Royal Lancaster again. Agilysys is actually one of our key sponsors and supporters again, so you'll get to see them here, there. Also on the website, you can find recordings of all of our webinars and masterclasses, which are also on our YouTube channel. And today's webinar should be uploaded within the next few days. But thank you all very much for listening, especially thank you to you, Matthew. That was really informative, and look
Thank you,
forward to
Jane.
seeing you all again soon.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks
Thank
very
you very
much.
much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.